Hello, everyone. My name is Alex, and my presentation is on the far-right political rise in Germany. And before we get straight into Germany, we have to talk about what it means to be far-right. And so most people think of like being far-right as being just right or left on this basic scale. But being left or right on this scale in terms of the political compass means how much control over the economy a government should have. So what we're talking about is how far up and down someone is, which is the social scale, or how much control the government should have over societal norms. So if we look on this right graph, we see Hitler right here, and that's what we're talking about. So Hitler had a lot of influence over societal norms and just society as a whole, and that's why he's fascist right here. So we're talking about this area right here. And so through this presentation, three questions will be answered. What is causing this ideological shift to the far right? Why are people buying into this type of rhetoric, or why people find it so appealing? And what implications will far right groups have, not only in Germany, but globally? And so the main party we're going to be looking at today is Alternative for Germany, or Alternative für Deutschland, or AfD. And so we'll get into their beliefs later, but they're highly identified as xenophobic, nationalistic, anti-Semitic, and through populism, and we'll define that later. But before we get into AfD specifics, we have to look at some political context in German elections. So when a German casts their ballot, they're essentially voting for two things. So the first thing they vote for is similar to the United States, and they're voting for a candidate who will represent their district in the Bundestag, which is their parliament. So that's the same as how if we like elect, someone to the House of Representatives. But the second thing that they vote for on the ballot is for a political party to represent the Bundestag. And so takes into account all the votes nationally and then allocates it by how much percentage each party gets. And so it's kind of confusing because you can vote for a candidate of a different political party for which political party preference you pick to vote for. So this creates overhang seats in their parliament. So there's never a specific set number of seats in their Bundestag. So because of this, there's a lot of parties within Germany. There's over 8, and you only need a 5% threshold in that second vote to gain a seat in the parliament. And so before we get straight into the AfD, there's some key players of other parties that are important to AfD's story and political rise. And so the Christian Democratic Union, or CDU, is led by the current Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, and they're a more centrist party with some more conservative, like social beliefs because they're a Christian-based party. And they're the largest party. And the second party we'll look at is the Social Democratic Party, which is similar to CDU, but they're a little bit more liberal, and they're the second biggest party. And the third party we'll look at, which it's not the third biggest party at all. It used to be quite popular, but it's the Left Party, or Die Linke. And so they're really important to AfD's story because they've taken a lot of votes away from this party. And so here's a distribution of the seats in the 2020 Bundestag. You can see CDU in black right here, and SPD in red right here, and AfD, the main party we'll be looking at, right here, with almost 90 seats. And so, this is really astonishing because AfD wasn't even in the Bundestag until later of 2017. So they've amassed like this number of seats in like not even 3 years, whereas parties, like CDU and SPD have been around since the end of World War II, and the Greens since the 90s. So it's a pretty big change really fast. And so for historical context, to understand why East Germany is the center of AfD, is that so after World War II, West Germany and East Germany were two different countries. The West was controlled by and influenced by capitalism and democracy via the United States and France and England, whereas the East was controlled by the Soviet Union and thus communist. So they only had one political party in the East, which was the German Socialist Union Party, or SED for short. And it wasn't until 1990 until the two countries were reunified. So after they were reunified, the Left Party was formed from the remainder of the Socialist Party that was present within the country of East Germany. And so the two biggest parties before AfD came onto the scene prior to 2017 were the CDU, the Christian Democratic Union, and the LP, the Left Party. So the CDU was popular because they were the party associated with West Germany that, quote unquote, freed the East. And the LP was just the tradition and status quo of the former Socialist Party because they were kind of the same or similar interests. And so when AfD won their first elections in 2017, they took away 20% of the vote from the Left Party and nearly 10% of the vote from the CDU. So this map kind of shows that all of the support is consolidated in the eastern states, which all this blue right here used to actually be its own country of East Germany. So now that we understand where AfD's vote share is and some of the other political parties, what does AfD believe in? And that's what we're going to get into. So xenophobia, or the fear of outsiders, is a really big player or key to AfD's beliefs. So they kind of base their whole party off of Angela Merkel's decision to let over 1 million Syrian refugees into the country in 2015. And so this really tapped into the fears of a lot of East Germans because the AfD branded this as the Islamification of the West. And so you see an AfD poster that says Islamisierung stoppen, AfD wählen. So stop Islamification, vote AfD. And so this goes even further. So at the time, the party leader, Franka Petri, stated that all German police should use firearms or shoot refugees entering the country. And so this sparked a bunch of Pegida and AfD rallies throughout Eastern Germany. And Pegida is just an anti-immigration group associated with the AfD. This is in Leipzig, a German city in the east. And this is Angela Merkel photoshopped in a burqa, the prime minister, and they're showing their kind of opposition against her. And, this serves a threat to a lot of Turkish people in Germany because they're the largest minority in the country at 3 million people. And they've been the biggest minority since the 1950s when they started arriving. So besides xenophobia, anti-Semitism and Nazism has played a large part in shaping the role. And this is mainly, but not exclusive to, Bjorn Höcke right here. He's often seen as the face of AfD's more extreme policies, which is the most popular type of policy of the party, and often uses Nazi-like rhetoric, which we'll get into. So this statement he made in 2017 about the Holocaust in Memorial in Berlin, he stated that Germans are the only people in the world who plant a monument of shame in the heart of their capital. Germany needs a 180-degree turnaround. This laughable policy of coming to terms with the past is crippling us. So what he's saying is that it's like embarrassing that Germany is kind of honoring like the defeat of World War II, kind of because, they're remembering the Jewish people that were killed from the Holocaust. And so he kind of sees this as a weakness. And although there's no like explicit anti-Semitic words used in this like speech, the message is, and he's not explicitly saying it because of this right here in point 3, being explicitly pro-Nazi and using Nazi rhetoric isn't protected by their freedom of speech in Germany. So you can't like just walk around with a swastika. So instead, they use this Völkisch tactics or folk-like tactics instead. So it's exactly what Hitler used too, and what Höcke and AfD members are using today. So the idea of the Volksgemeinschaft, or people's community, so Hitler defined the Volksgemeinschaft as being Aryan and Höcke ethnically German. There's not really a difference between the two. Höcke would use Aryan, but it's illegal to be so pro-Nazi like that. And so then they have this idea of Volksfeindlich, or being like hostile to the Volksgemeinschaft. And so Hitler deemed these hostile groups as Jews and communists, whereas Höcke believes that they're Muslims and socialists. And both Hitler and Höcke would deem their enemies as socialists or communists. And you can see this Völkisch kind of tactic in this AfD poster where it says, Wir sind das Volk, we are the one people. So here's some other, comparing a Nazi poster to an AfD poster. there's like kind of like a loving mother and her kids right there. And right here it says, Ein Volk hilft sich selbst. So only the one people helps themselves. So that's kind of showing like only the German Volksgemeinschaft, this Aryan group, can help themselves, not outsiders, meaning the Jews in that case. And so this poster says, Der Islam passt nicht zu unserer Küche, which means Islam doesn't fit or it's not compatible with our kitchen. Trust in Germany. And you see this cute pig that's supposed to mock Muslims because they don't eat pork, and because Germans eat a lot of pork with sausage. It's kind of showing that like their culture doesn't fit in with the German culture, like their Volksgemeinschaft, their way of life, their group of people. So after learning about all this racist policy, how is AfD appealing? Why are they getting votes? And that's mainly because of an idea called populism. And here's the definition based on the Oxford Dictionary. And essentially, it's kind of just appealing to people's fears that, the elite and wealthy and powerful in society isn't listening to the common man. And you can kind of see how AfD has already done this by pointing Muslims and Jews, as the enemy against like a German way of life. And, Germans, especially in the East, like are attracted to this because AfD is providing like presenting the sense of community and like authority. And they didn't really receive this when they were subjected to communist rule for so many years. And so, this poster really embeds it. So it says, damit aus Europa kein Eurabien wird. So that Europe won't become a European Arabia. So basically that Europe won't become like this, won't become like Muslim and Middle Eastern dominated. That's what AfD's approach, like through populism, is. They're bringing into these fears of change. And so you can see through this, most Germans in the East fear change and have lower incomes of lower levels of income and education because of communist rule. And they're scared of change because they've been subjected to it for so long, under the rule of Nazis, then under the rule of communists, and then now finally free, but not as rich as the West. And so they're capitalizing on this anti-establishment party against the quote elites in society because they're allowing what they believe is the Islamification of the West. And so here are some other posters, just as this one is blaming Muslims. These Nazi posters are blaming Jews for all the problems. This poster says the Jew is guilty of the war, and this says the Jew eater. It's like a parade float, that's anti-Jewish. So just as AfD blames the Muslims, just as AfD blames Muslims, the Nazis blame the Jews. And so this is a greater populist message that they've been feeding into called the Great Replacement Theory. It started in France, and it's the idea that a globalist group, most notably what they believe the Jews, are working to replace European people throughout Europe and North America for a Muslim and Middle Eastern majority. And so, the theory isn't real, but it appeals to people. And the scary thing about it is that whether or not this guy right here named Alexander Gahlen believes it or not, he stated that a population exchange is running at full speed. And why this is significant that he said that is because Alexander Gahlen is the political chair and leader of the AfD. Their leader is like kind of promoting this theory of the Great Replacement. And it really taps into the fears of many people in the East that believe that like their livelihood is at stake and they're going to be replaced. And even though it's not real, you can see why these people are scared of this. They don't want to be replaced. They want to live in a free Germany after they were subjected to communist rule. And another aspect is called the Lügenpresse, or the lying press. And we kind of have this in the United States with fake news, deeming everything as fake news. And it is it kind of creates this appearance that AfD is the outsider and the anti-establishment against the media. And at this AfD rally, you can see this poster that says, "Hello, lying press. Goebbels would be proud of all of you and your anti-Russian warmongering." So Goebbels was the Nazi propagandist for Adolf Hitler. So it's kind of combining this, this strong nationalism with its Nazi past. And you can see how, AfD is kind of really feeding into all this anxiety and fear. So what implications does this have in Germany, or have already had? And so it's already affected policy in a big way. Immigration has now become like the center of policy talks because of AfD's anti-Muslim rhetoric. And so this creates an issue of the European Union. AfD wants to leave the EU, just like England, to create stricter and stronger borders. So, to stop immigration flow into the country. And a lot of violence has also occurred as a result of this rise in far-right politics. So two shootings that occurred, one in October 2019 and one this year in February 2020. So the Halle synagogue shooting was a man that killed two people and planned to kill 68 other Jews at the Jewish temple. And the Hanau shooting specifically targeted Turkish Germans who were Muslim, and they killed 9 people. Both groups had ties to the AfD and far-right extremism, both posting manifestos on social media before they committed their acts. And so, this just isn't exclusive in Germany, but these are two significant recent ones that happened in which, Germany isn't a country where a lot of shootings and violence occurs. So, it's all connected to this far-right ideology, the growth of it. And so globally, this poster right here kind of shows, it's a little outdated from 2017, but it shows the trends of how a lot of countries in Europe are more drifting towards far-right ideologies. And even though like these in the 20% don't seem a lot, all these countries have multiple parties. So gaining nearly 30% of the vote is almost a third of the country because people are voting so many different parties. And so a lot of this was orchestrated by this man right here. You may recognize him. His name is Steve Bannon. He was the former strategist for President Trump. And since he left the Trump whole campaign administration since 2017, he's become a leader in Europe, in Brussels, called the Movement, that promotes the spread of far-right ideology and far-right politics to disrupt the norms in society. And so we kind of already see this in the United States. Bannon helped form the Trump slogans of "Build the Wall" and the Muslim ban that fed into the anxiety of so many Southerners and Midwesterners in the country, of thinking that, countries were going to become all Muslim and that, Mexicans are going to take people's jobs. It really reached a lot of people in believing that could be true. And Trump capitalized on that populistic approach. And it's not just exclusive to conservatives. It's also occurs in liberalism with Bernie Sanders. Even though his isn't like race-based, his is more class-based, that, all of the working class and middle class and poor class of the country, the 1% is to blame, the elite and wealthy in society, and that all the working class are being ignored. So, his isn't as detrimental as right-wing populism, but nonetheless, it still exists. And so that's my presentation. Here's my works cited, but it was a lot of information to fit just into these few minutes. I encourage all of you guys to read more about it. And I just hope that what you saw is that although, more far-right groups can put a facade on things, really look into the messaging behind their intent of their policy. History repeats itself. And at the end of the day, is there really a big difference between what the Nazis did in the 30s and blaming Jews and all the hate that was surrounded against Jews, to current time, to all this hate that's being directed towards Muslims and Mexicans? At the end of the day, if you replaced what's happening today with the word Jews, you wouldn't think that you'd be in the 1930s. And so that's what I hope all of you got out of it. Thank you for listening, and bye.